Hey, this is Brodie Welch. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, self-care strategist, host of the podcast A Healthy Curiosity, and I'm kicking it with Doree.
Let's kick it! Welcome to the Kicking It with Doree podcast. I'm your host, Doree Allen Nieves, and today I'm honored to have with me Brodie Welch. Brodie Welch is a licensed acupuncturist, board-certified herbalist, yoga health coach, and self-care strategist. She helps caring, high-achieving women put themselves on their own to-do list so they can trade stress and burnout for energy, joy, and vibrant health. She has helped thousands of clients improve their digestion, sleep, and mood, dial in a regular body-mind practice, and step into the next version of themselves. Welcome to the show, Brodie.
Thanks so much for having me here, Doree.
It's so great to meet you. Just hearing your voice is very calming. You know, I'm a voice person, and so I immediately just am trained to notice people's voices and emotions and stuff. So even though I'm not physically with you, can't see you, don't know what you're doing or how you're dressed, I just feel this calm energy, you know? So I think this is going to be a great show.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah, and really, what is time and space? We're energetically connected through the ethers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that helps, too, because of what you do. It would be kind of weird to have someone who practices yoga or talks about mindfulness be all stressed out and, you know?
Walking my talk is something of an obsession. I really believe in it really living my message, and so much of what I want to do is empower people to take care of themselves, and that is my biggest struggle. So yeah, it's nice to hear that I'm at least succeeding marginally.
Yes. Either you're succeeding or you're succeeding at faking. Either way, you're doing good. And everybody that's listening, I'm sure, can agree with that. Now, one of the things that really intrigued me about you when I found you was that you use Chinese medicine in your practice. And this show is about self-care. So I'm first going to go right into something that people can learn right away in the first 5 minutes of listening here. What does Chinese medicine have to do with self-care?
Well, I should probably back up and explain what Chinese medicine is for those people who don't know, because it's really, I feel like not necessarily, it hasn't hit the mainstream yet. A lot of people have heard of acupuncture or have had acupuncture done, and that's really kind of the sexiest branch of Chinese medicine. But really, Chinese medicine is a complete system of healthcare with its own methodology, its own way of diagnosing and treating that encompasses not only acupuncture, but Chinese herbal medicine, lifestyle and diet, Qigong, which is energy exercise. A lot of people have heard of Tai Chi, which is similar, and body work. And so really it's applied philosophy fundamentally. So we look at the whole person, we look at body, mind, and spirit, and we look at what's out of balance in this particular ecosystem that is you. And we work to address the root of the problem, not just the symptom that might have brought you in to see a practitioner. And so acupuncturist is the title that we're often given, which really obscures these other branches of the medicine. So basically, when I started my practice over 14 years ago and hung out my shingle and I was like, all right, I'm here to treat. And people would come in with complaints ranging from chronic pain issues to headaches or migraines to hormone balance stuff to insomnia to depression and anxiety. And I found myself recognizing that, yeah, a lot of times acupuncture is tremendously powerful medicine, as are Chinese herbs, but fundamentally, if what you do every day in your daily life is going to trump what anybody can do in an office visit once a month or however often you're coming in, because really the most powerful lever we have over our health is how we're living and how we're how we're nourishing ourselves, how we're moving, our mindset as we go through life. And so what Chinese medicine has to do with self-care is that lifestyle and diet are a branch of Chinese medicine. And this is basically saying that everything that you do can either be medicine, neutral, or negative as far as your health goes. And so if you're serious about wanting to have a different experience in your body or in your mind or in the world, that you've got to do things differently. And really, the goal of any Chinese medicine treatment is to bring balance to the body. So instead of seeing the body as a machine where it's like, okay, what's wrong? What's the diseased part? How can I fix it or replace it? We look at the body as this ecosystem where it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't connect your headaches, with your insomnia, with your anxiety. But from a Chinese medicine point of view, we don't have to see three different doctors. We can just put all that together, tie it up under one differential diagnosis, and treat that root problem. And so basically, the goal of every treatment is to bring yin and yang into balance in the body. A lot of people have probably know what I'm talking about with the yin yang symbol, that sort of black and white, swirly tadpole like shape. That symbol says a lot about the nature of the universe. And basically, that the only constant is change, right? It's not two rectangles hanging out side by side. It's that this idea of that life is about dynamic balance. If we look at what that yin yang symbol is, we've got the white part, which is the yang energy, which is like the active, warming, moving, busy, doing energy, and the black part is the yin, is like the peaceful, restful, still, nourishing energy. And we live in a culture that's like always emphasizing the speed, the productivity, the getting more done and faster. It emphasizes the external, not the internal, like how it looks versus how it feels, the material versus the spiritual, just so many things that we are out of balance on as far as yin and yang goes. And so recognizing that we're a bit yang addicted as a culture, and that a lot of times what self-care is like, let's look at our lives and let's look at how much yin and how much yang is going on. Are we giving ourselves adequate rest? Are we giving ourselves time to get quiet and pull inward? Or are we burning the candle at both ends? Are we driving and striving and putting energy upward and outward all the time? So it's really, to make this less like woo-woo, is like, yeah, there's this nature of another fundamental premise in Chinese medicine is that everything is made of energy, but that's really kind of physics, in the sense that you're not a sack of meat, you're a living field of energy. If we look at the body from Einstein's perspective, for example, right? Matter and energy are the same thing. They change into one another all the time. And we're just going to call the denser stuff yin and the more active moving stuff yang. Or if you think about like the body in general, that the yin it can be like the being of who you are, and the yang are the processes that are going on, like, the just the power behind your heartbeat, or behind your breath, or behind your digestive system or your immune system, that kind of thing. And so anyway, it's I could go on and on about this, obviously, because I love it, but in general, it's like, if people don't necessarily think of themselves as energy beings that are changing all the time, and the fact that looking at the energetics of life and what they can do about it, really missing a potential opportunity to have a lot of power over how you show up in the world.
Wow. Breathe, Brodie. Oh my gosh. That's just like my brain. Oh my gosh.
I do that to people. I do the fire hose thing just because it's, yeah. I love teaching, right? Like the really, if we look at, healers are supposed to educate people. That's like fundamentally.
No, we wanted to know, trust me. We need to know this stuff, but oh my goodness. Wow. And I mean, not only do you practice Chinese medicine, like you're an acupuncturist, you work with herbal medicine, you're a coach. How did you like marry all of those things together to teach people about self-care?
As I started off, actually in my late 20s, I opened my practice and started working with people as primarily acupuncture was what people were looking for, right? So they might come in for shoulder pain, and before I can treat them, I have them fill out this lengthy intake form that goes into all the different systems of the body. And so even the questions themselves help people get a sense of like, oh yeah, I guess I do take Tums a couple times a week. Like I might not go see my doctor for, stomach stuff, but there is a little something going on there. Or I guess I do actually feel more high strung, or have, that I do seem to be more irritable than I'd like to be. And so things like that would prompt people to reflect on themselves, maybe things that don't rise to the standard of a problem that they've got to medicate, but are imbalances in the body, imbalances in either the mind body or the physical body. And so we'd get to talking about that. And then And so basically my job was to kind of open the door. It's like, yeah, we're here for shoulder pain, but could your shoulder pain be tied to the fact that you believe that you need to be at your desk 12 hours a day? And, could that actually be related to what's going on with your stomach? And could that, and so people would start to see themselves as like, oh, right, it's not just about my shoulder. Getting up from my desk to do some stretching or, doing some self massage in these areas. Like I was all about trying to give people the tools to take care of themselves. So I teach them, oh, well, here's this acupoint you could rub on, or here's where this channel goes. And you could consider just, spend a few minutes and work on yourself, and look at the mindset that is running the show here about why you believe that you need to be chained to your desk. And so first of all, just educating people about what Chinese medicine could potentially help with was the first step. But almost right away, I started teaching classes on Chinese medicine's ability to help people in various ways. And really, I'd been a yoga practitioner for many years, but didn't necessarily get into Qigong all that much. And Qigong is basically Taoist yoga, or like it's really, if you can imagine, like super slow, repetitive movement that allows you to just sink into the movement as a meditation. So for people who don't like to sit still, it's nice to be able to combine your breath with a movement and like turn your attention inward. And so Qigong has all this amazing ability to not only help us feel more energized, but to open up areas of the body that feel stuck. And there's basically these beautiful little moving meditation routines that are particularly good medicine for different organ systems of the body. And so I started my Qigong teacher training and started teaching Qigong classes. And it was, impossible for me to not drop in like, oh yeah, well, this is good for the liver, but the liver also has to do with creativity and also has to do with anger and also has to do with, and people would just be like, whoa, what, there's a lot here. And realizing that in order to support people to really get the most out of living in alignment with Chinese medicine, right? With creating that yin yang balance in their lives, I needed to go beyond the clinical setting. And so I started getting people together in groups to change our daily habits, because I would see these like totally motivated, smart women leaving my office being like, all right, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to like change my diet so that I can drop that 20 pounds, or I really am going to start my meditation practice or my Qigong practice. I am ready. And they would go home and do it for a few days at a time and then kind of peter out. And I would see them for their next visit, and they would just tell me, oh yeah, well, it's busy and my kid needed this and my job needed this and, but my partner needed this. And I recognized that that all the tools in the world that I could amass weren't going to help anybody if people didn't actually believe that they had the right to take care of themselves and actually occupy that top spot on their to-do list. And so I recognized that the proper container for getting people to bridge that gap between what they know that they need to be doing to take care of themselves and actually doing it was something along the lines of like a church or like AA, where people are together because they want to stay committed to this value that they have. But we live in a culture that doesn't value putting yourself at the top of the to-do list. We see that as selfish, especially for women. We're socialized to take care of everybody else first. And that, and not to mention the sort of structural incentive that in order to make as much as a man, we often have to work harder. And so, plus like shouldering the greater burden of things like housework and kid care and even elder care, parents, all that falls to women more significantly. And so just recognizing that is a cultural problem and it's hard to get healthy alone. And so a lot of times like the people would come to see me and recognize, oh yeah, like I do actually, if you're the kind of person that wants to take care of yourself and to feel like powerful in doing so, it's hard to do that without support. And so this is kind of the focus of my work now is running kind of self-care boot camp where we bring online the core competencies that everybody needs to be healthy. On my podcast, I interview health professionals from all stripes about all different conditions, and everybody says the same stuff, right? Like everybody says that the answer to any health condition basically is like eating some whole foods, getting enough sleep, doing your joy, not doing too much, having a body-mind practice or a mindfulness practice, managing stress. These are like the basics. And yet it's so basically creating a structure for people to actually get with it long enough to nurture a new habit So I studied habit change too, like what's it going to take to make these autopilots so that we can spend our energy on what we really want to spend our energy on, right? Like that our mission in the world, our jobs, our families, whatever's important to us, that automating the mundane so that we can free up all this chi or energy for the rest of life.
Yes, I agree. And by the way, Brodie mentioned a few things there. She mentioned that she's the host of a podcast and it's called A Healthy Curiosity. And we will talk about that a little bit later, but I want to stay with self-care. People, I think, like you said, often don't put themselves on the top of that to-do list because they don't believe that they should be. Tell us why, in your opinion, self-care is not selfish, because I think that people confuse those two terms, and we want people to understand. That's why I titled this show, It's Okay to Be Selfish, because I want people to understand that even though they're not the same, if they were equating it that way, yes, get selfish, okay? But before I get on my soapbox and get off on a tangent, I'm going to let you explain why they're not the same.
I like your soapbox, Doree. You can just keep. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it is so fundamentally not selfish, right? If you are, imagine your day interacting with everybody that you interact with, coworkers, family members, whoever, when you have had 3 hours of sleep. Like, are you nice to those people? Are you patient? Are you present? Are you able to deliver high quality creative work, or really just like you're absolutely not at your best, right? And I think that's a no-brainer in terms of like we can all relate to what a difference it makes in how we show up in the world when we're adequately rested versus when we're really short on sleep. And that's like fundamentally the illustration of how yin changes into yang, and why we need you can't have good yang, good energy, good attention, good doing, if you haven't had adequate yin in the form of rest and rejuvenation. So it's the kind of thing where we get in our culture, we get in this mindset, well, first of all, like it's this badge of honor to be exhausted and stressed all the time, right? If you're not exhausted, you must not be doing enough. And yet it's a paradox that actually, if we're willing to let go of just the kind of mindless racing around from thing to thing without being centered and aware of what our priorities are, it's like that if we let ourselves get caught up in the busy, we're less efficient, we're less present for the people in our lives, and we're just worse at life. And so it actually, everybody benefits when you take care of yourself. And so, and in these ways of, and really, I think we should look at what self-care actually is, right? There's, as I'm talking about it, it's these fundamental habits that we all need to have. It's the baseline. It's taking care of the fundamentals that are important. And this is not like frivolous or trivial. That I don't mean self-care as like buying yourself a new purse, or, that, as I love pedicures as much as the next person, but that's also not what I'm talking about. It's that it's the things that we do every day that are essential for that to be that foundation that broadens the platform from which we serve. So, for example, if we're stressed out, we're less likely to be creative, we're less likely to be on task, we're less likely to be present and loving. And so what is it going to take to manage stress? Well, for a lot of people, exercise is the best way of moving our energy. Like basically qi stagnation, liver qi stagnation specifically, is probably the most common Chinese medicine diagnosis I make. So it's the liver's job to keep all the energy flowing freely and smoothly in the body. And anytime we're stressed out, you can imagine like the shoulders going up by the ears and your hands getting into tight little fists, and the heart racing, the breath getting shallow. Like anytime we get into that fight or flight mode, everything stagnates. And that is the opposite of being, like we're really not in our full prefrontal cortex when we're in that state. We're in kind of a fear mode. We're in kind of a fight or flight, which literally takes us back to lizard brain. And we stop digesting our food, we start digesting ourselves. It wreaks havoc on everything from fertility to immunity. And it's not a good place to be living life from. So again, the yin and the yang of the nervous system, most people go around in fight or flight a lot. If you enter that state once every 3 days, it can elevate your cortisol levels. It can, your stress hormones go up, and that leaves fundamentally less left over for the rest and repair functions that we can only be in when we are relaxed. And so just things like that not having life feel crazy and hectic, that right there is, whether you're doing that through a meditation practice or an exercise practice, or simply just leaving more space to transition from one activity to the next in the course of your day, that is going to fundamentally alter how your health and how you show up in the world. So that's the long-winded answer of why it absolutely is not selfish to engage in the core competencies of self-care, in the real stuff, as opposed to the empty calories of self-care, which might be like, I need to, binge watch my favorite show until 3 a.m. It's like, I wouldn't actually count that as self-care at all. That it really takes you fundamentally away from what those goals are. So it's actually much more disciplined than frivolous.
So then what is the definition of self-care? How do you define that?
Well, the pillars of self-care, I would include moving your body, eating nourishing whole foods that you can digest, getting enough sleep, making time for joy, and moving through the world with ease, whatever enables you to do that.
That's good right there. That's real good. Say that last one again.
Moving through the world with ease.
So many people have things in their life that they do that they're constantly fighting with. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person, doesn't have to be necessarily be a significant other, could be a coworker, maybe not, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a person. But there's just like circumstances and things that that you can make choices that would make things easier for you. I mean, life isn't easy as a whole, but if you have some control over things, why would you choose to continue to be frustrated? It just astounds me how some people make choices and then say, okay, well, I can't do anything about this. This is just the way it is. This is just my life. This is just, but there's always something, even if it starts with your attitude and your perception and your perspective.
Absolutely. There are certainly things in life that will be that we can't control and that suck, right? Like none of us have a life of leisure necessarily. But because we always have a choice as to how we think about something, being able to just flip your motivation can a lot of times be super helpful. So, for example, if you're choosing to be frustrated by something, you could flip it so that instead of, oh, I have to do this thing and it's not going the way that I want it to, you can flip your motivation as like, okay, I'm choosing to do this thing because I'm earning money for it, or I'm choosing to do this because even though it's not going swimmingly, I'm putting in the effort. And that just being aligned with something that you actually can feel good about is going to decrease your stress around it. And if it's banging your head against the same wall over and over again, you might need to shift positions so that you're no longer facing that wall, so that you might need that new job or that new relationship or that whatever it is. There might need to be a structural change in your life that you make in order to not be perpetually frustrated. But stress starts in the mind, right? Like there's nothing in the world that's inherently stressful that's not life-threatening, right? We're not running from tigers in the modern world. We're very rarely, for most of us at least, probably listening to this podcast, we're not stressed about where we're going to sleep tonight or where our next meal is coming from. Like the stresses that most of us are dealing with have more to do with a threat to who we think we are in the world, right? Like that, what if people think I'm not responsible, or what if people think that I'm unkind or selfish, or, like that these kinds of things. If I make this decision, then it's a threat to who I think I am. And so that's really just about our fixed identities, which if we, in Chinese medicine, we look at different personality types as well as physical types: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And recognizing that, like, oh yeah, so if I'm a wood type and I identify with how much stuff I get done in a day, because like a tree, upward, outward energy that's always like growing and striving and driving, if that's the only thing that makes me feel safe in the world, and I'm not ever allowing myself to to have fun or be spontaneous or to have some quiet reflective time, it's like that those would be like the elements of fire and the element of water respectively, then I'm actually not living in accordance with who I could be. I'm choosing to lock myself into this fixed identity, which is quite stressful to like kind of keep up that facade as opposed to just allowing
Mhm.
yourself the full humanity that we're all endowed with.
The imposter syndrome.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Because we're not just what we do. And so being able to let go of identifying with, with the doing at all and let it be like, just ask yourself, like, would it be okay if I got nothing done?
Yeah, sometimes that moving through the world with ease, I just keep on thinking about that. That is just so, it's so simple, but yet so profound to me.
And what would be required for you to do that? You know, like that I feel like that's a really good question to ask ourselves. That's something practical that everyone listening can think about, right? That given my set of responsibilities, given my day as I have it set up, how could this be easy? Right? Like how, you know, and for some of us, it's like, okay, well, that means a level of acceptance that things aren't exactly as I want them to be. And for some of us, it might be flipping our motivation, finding something that we can authentically align with that makes it easier. For some of us, it might be like, oh yeah, well, it just means if I want tomorrow to be, if I want to move through tomorrow with ease and I've got a lot going on, maybe it means getting up 10 minutes earlier so that I can start my day from a place of centered internal alignment where I close my eyes and I take some deep breaths and I visualize how I want the day to go and I get clear on what's most important and then I make space. Anyway, it could just be a 10-minute practice and it could be taking time in your day to check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I breathing? Right? Because our breath,
Mhm.
I can't believe I haven't brought this up already. That the fastest way to affect our nervous systems, the fastest way to regulate, to get out of that fight or flight and into that rest and digest is with the breath, because the breath is the bridge that takes us from one from the yang side to the yin side of our nervous systems. So it's the kind of thing where if you're stressed out, your breath will naturally speed up. It will naturally get shallow because it's equipping you to fight off a predator or flee. But you're generally not needing to do that in modern emergencies or like deadlines, for example. Doesn't really require that skeletal muscle. So if you can close your eyes and focus on allowing your breath to lengthen, to drop down lower into your body to below your navel and place what we call lower dantian, right? This place that in martial arts is cultivated as your center. It's also a place in Chinese medicine where yin and yang meet in the body. So breathing into the low belly, letting the low belly expand in the inhale and contract and move towards the spine on the exhale, allowing the breath to be long, slow, deep, easy, and gentle, and spending just a few minutes that, for example, counting the breath, count however long it takes to inhale and make the exhale the same number. So if it's 5 on the inhale, make the exhale 5. If it's 3, doesn't matter, just make it the same. And focusing on the transition between the inhalation and the exhalation so that it smooths out and becomes like a sine curve or a wave where there's this inhale, the pause at the top, the exhale, the pause at the bottom, and really just meditating on the smoothness of the breath creates a smoothness in our nervous systems, and it drops us out of that fight or flight mode and back into rest and digest or rest and repair mode, which is where we need to be most of the time in order to be healthy. So if that's a breathing meditation that I suggest people set a gentle alarm on your cell phone or on your computer to remind yourself to just pause what you're doing, drop back into your breath, and really just a few minutes of conscious breathing can be a wonderful reset to help you remember that it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it does.
Wow, that was so relaxing. Just those last 2 minutes that you were talking, I just like felt myself coming down, just being quiet.
Well, if you want more of that, Doree, you can go to my website and grab a free breathing meditation and a free Qigong meditation, as those are available because it is the most important thing. It's the most important place to start. So I want everybody to have that as a resource.
Yes, yes, yes. We're going to get to that in a second as well, because I want to make sure people know about you've got this program that you do called Level Up. And so we're going to tell everybody about that. So how do we start putting ourselves at the top of the to-do list? Because that's not something that anyone is used to doing. We're always putting ourselves last.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it, as I alluded to before, all of the advice and tips about how to take care of yourself don't matter if you don't believe that you actually have the right to occupy that. So the first thing is cracking that nut of mindset and believing, really fundamentally believing that self-care is not selfish, really understanding the paradox that you need good yin to create good yang. And so first off is believing it. And actually on my website, I have a self-care manifesto that reminds you of all of this. And that's something people can grab. And really, I don't know how you can occupy that top slot on your to-do list if you don't start there. So a motto that we have in in my coaching program is mornings are mine. And really making sure that before you engage with the world, before you open your email, before you see what what crazy stuff is going on in our world, the most important thing is to connect to yourself and your highest values. And so if you don't own your mornings, it's really hard to own the rest of your day and to have
Mm-hmm.
it flow the way you want it to. And so really, so once you get that, if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not in a position to really take care of the other people in my life or my work. I'm going to start doing this. The first thing I want you to do is is set yourself up to have an awesome morning and to start the day right. And that actually begins the night before. For a lot of us, like I suggested, we get up 10 minutes early, but we don't want to take that away from sleep. So this also means having a winding down routine at the end of the day that allows you to go to bed so that you can get up and have a little time to yourself and to start the day right, to align with your highest values, to do some breathing, to some meditation. Even 20 minutes of movement in the morning can be amazing to connect with your physical body, to hydrate, to get enough water so that you can eliminate, so you can let go of yesterday's waste before you take it into today. And to be able to, so really on a fundamental body mundane level, as well as on a spiritual, ethereal, energetic level, it's so important to have the mornings feel spacious and to have that be this inward time that the yin that gives birth to the yang of your day. So starting with the mindset and starting with mornings are mine and allowing our first that we know that willpower is a muscle that gives out as our days go on. And if you're trying to start a new habit, like if you know that your life would be so much better if you take a walk every day, or if you do that 15 minutes of qigong or yoga or whatever it is that is going to be your practice, do it first. If it's a new habit, it's vulnerable. It's like a little seedling, and that could be eaten by a deer if you haven't, put a little fence around it or a little cage around it. And so you really want to nurture this new habit by making it the absolute easiest and most automatic thing that happens in your day, so that you make sure that it happens, because life will eventually take over and it will bump you down off the top of that to-do list
Oh, yeah.
unless you start there and unless you make first things first. And so, yeah, that's another motto. It's like mornings are mine and first things first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like, when people talk about finances, your personal finances, they say save for yourself first, save your emergency first, because otherwise you'll pay all your other bills. You won't have anything left. So, yes, put yourself first. I cannot co-sign that any harder than what you just said. You mentioned your group coaching program a moment ago. It's called Level Up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's essentially self-care boot camp or a self-care support group. And it's a place for like for if you know that you are really wanting to dial in these practices of self-care, whether that's getting good rest or whether that's cleaning up your diet or whether that's having a body mind practice, a mindfulness practice. Easeful living is one of the habits. Basically, it's 11 weeks and we take a habit a week that we focus on. And the habits are not rocket science. They're like, okay, like earlier, later dinner. For a lot of people, they're able to drop weight so much easier just by shifting the when of eating. And that's happens because the circadian rhythm and biology that Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, traditional medicine of India, have identified. And so it's like, okay, we're going to look at our lives through this new lens. We're going to dial in the habits of yogis and sages that have stood the test of time that help us thrive. And so each week, like, okay, maybe you've got the sleep thing down, but exercise is a struggle. So then maybe you're spending the week that we're all focused on sleep, you're identifying a small change that you want to make with exercise, for example. What's the next doable step a goal that you could set for yourself that feels manageable? And basically we do that. We identify a small step that we can take and we write it down, and we all have a spreadsheet. We all have a Facebook group. We all get together weekly on a coaching call to identify kind of like what is in the way of this becoming the new norm. And then, so we figure that out, we pick that lock. And when that becomes easy, if your exercise goal is like, okay, I'm going to take a walk 3 days a week, and I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week without fail. And once you get that down, you identify the next doable step. And so it's like, okay, well, actually, exercise is helping me with my stress levels, but I really could use, I really recognize that I need to cut out sugar. And so then again, like there's a different habit each week that we focus on. You identify a small micro change in your life that you could make, and you've got the support of an experienced self-care strategist, i.e. me, as well as a group of peers that help you raise your bar, all working together to kind of like geese flying south in the winter, right? That it's like they do it in a V shape. They do it together as a group because it's far easier than everybody having to face the wind on their own. And so in this culture that never really rewards you for setting a boundary or taking care of yourself, we need each other. We need a support group. We need that sort of accountability and that commitment. So it's something that I'm totally in love with. People are making massive changes that they never thought possible on everything from, having more energy, dropping weight, feeling more centered and confident, feeling like they know how to age optimally and know how to take care of themselves. All sorts of complaints of health issues are evaporating left and right. People are even quitting drinking and things like that. It's really, the progress people are making is so inspiring to me. So if that's interesting to anybody, I'd love to hop on a call with you and talk about whether or not you're a good fit.
Yes. And so now we come to the gold mine right here. You have mentioned like all these little nuggets here and there, little clues and stuff. Please tell us about your website where we can get all these different resources and schedule this call with you and connect with you on social media.
My website is brodiewelch.com. That's Brodie with an IE and Welch with a CH, brodiewelch.com. And when you get there, the very top banner will invite you to download the Self-Care Manifesto. And you can also grab the Calm and Centered Bundle. That's the meditation and the world's simplest Qigong practice that you can make as a regular self-care practice. And you can visit the Level Up page to learn more about that. And I also have, I have an online Qigong class that people might be interested in. I teach the basics of Chinese medicine. I have meditations recorded for those of you who are in love with my voice at this point. You can hear me. You can download meditations, and you can listen to my podcast, The Healthy Curiosity, and subscribe. So, and I'd love to hear how I can support everybody listening in terms of taking their self-care up a notch.
Oh yeah, there's not a person alive that can, do something else for themselves. You know what I mean? As far as not like you said, necessarily like a pedicure or something, but really internally making a change that will stick and that will benefit them, because, you're no good to anybody else, if you don't put yourself first. That's the thing people just don't get.
It's the hackneyed oxygen mask on first before helping other people. It's like, but it's really true. It's really true. If you run out of oxygen, nobody else is going to be better off for it.
No, not at all. And we all have something wonderful to share with the world. Think about all of those things that you've held back and said to yourself, you know what, when my kids get out of school, I'll do this. Or when I get through this thing, then I'll go back to school. Or when I do this, then I can do that. The someday is not a day of the week. A goal without a deadline is just a daydream. So it's like really putting yourself first not only benefits you and the people around you, but there's people that you don't even know that need the talent and the wisdom and your experience that you could be sharing with them. Like, think of all the stuff. If you could just think of like 2 or 3 things Brodie has said in the last 30 minutes that have just hit you upside the head. I know I can. I mean, what if she didn't practice self-care? What if she was just like, oh, well, I got too many other things to do, or I got this job or whatever. There's things that you're like have inside of you that are being held back from other people by you not sharing, whether it's writing a book, going back to school, starting this business that you want to start that you've always had in the back of your mind, but you just say, someday, I have to wait for this when I get around to it. And those excuses are so useless. So the self-care is not just about feeling good and getting enough sleep, which is like that's primary and that's basic that you need to do that. But there's so many other wonderful things that can happen as a result of the self-care that you can give to the world.
I love that you brought that up. It's like that we all do have gifts for the world, and some of them are big, like writing a book or starting a podcast or starting a business. But some of them, and this is one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, which goes, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so and how you made them feel doesn't require you doing a thing except being you, but being you in a way where you're able to make them feel heard, supported, loved, cared for, interested, that which requires your presence. It doesn't require action.
Awesome. Brodie, I want to thank you so much for sharing this wisdom with you. I know that even though you had a lot to say, I'm sure that we only scratched the surface. But like she said, she is the host of a Healthy Curiosity podcast. Go to her website, brodiewelch.com. It's BRODIEWELCH.com. And get all these goodies that she's offering to you, and really think about maybe just 1 or 2 things that you could do. It doesn't have to be a grand big thing, just 1 or 2 things that you could do differently that would bring more ease into your life, and let us know what those are. You can get us on Twitter or Facebook and let us know your thoughts, because we do care, and all of these links will be in the show notes, of course. That's what everybody says. It's all in the show notes at kickingitwithdoree.com, and there's no G in that. Brodie, thank you so much for being with us.
Doree, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you and just to share in your message and your mission. That we're definitely aligned on that, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
If you like this show, I'd love to have your support. Visit patreon.com/kickingitwithdoree without the G to learn more.